The Valari were hunters. They had always been hunters. Their ancestors hunted on a world of thick jungles and endless night, where only the strongest survived. Now they hunted across the stars, and every species they met learned to fear them. Their children were called cubs, and they were raised on warships. From the moment they could walk, they learned to fight. They learned to kill. They learned that weakness meant death, and strength meant everything. The flagship Fang of Rethka carried 200 warriors and 36 cubs, divided into 3 groups called creches. Each crochet had 12 cubs and 1 crochet master who taught them the ways of the hunt. The cubs slept in small rooms with metal walls. They ate meat that was sometimes still warm. They trained for 6 hours every day until their muscles burned and their claws ached. This was the Valari way. This had always been the Valari way. Then the human came. Her name was Yuna, and she arrived on a small shuttle during the 3rd moon cycle. She was part of something called a diplomatic exchange program. The Valari did not fully understand what this meant. They did not have diplomats. They had warriors who spoke, and warriors who listened, and warriors who killed those who did not listen well enough. But the galaxy was changing. Other species were forming alliances. The Valari High Council had decided that perhaps they needed to understand these weaker races better. So they agreed to host 1 human on their flagship for 1 full rotation around the home star. Yuna stepped off the shuttle carrying 1 bag. She was small, even for a human. Her skin was a warm brown color, and her black hair was tied back in a simple knot. She wore soft clothes that had no armor and no weapons. When she smiled at the warriors waiting to greet her, several of them stepped back without meaning to. There was something wrong with this human. She was not afraid. Commander Grath was the largest warrior on the ship. He had killed 47 enemies in personal combat. His fur was dark gray, almost black, and his eyes were the color of old blood. He looked down at the human female and waited for her to show proper respect. Yuna looked up at him and said, "Hello. Thank you for having me. I look forward to learning about your people." Her voice was calm. Her heartbeat was steady. Grath could hear it with his sensitive ears, and this confused him. Prey animals had fast heartbeats when they stood before predators. This human's heart beat slow and even like she was resting. "You will be given quarters in the lower section," Grath said. "You will not enter restricted areas. You will not speak to the cubs. You will not interfere with ship operations." "I understand," Yuna said, still smiling. "May I ask why I cannot speak to the cubs?" "They are being trained. Outside influence could weaken them." Yuna nodded slowly. "Of course. I would not want to weaken anyone." She picked up her bag and followed the warrior assigned to guide her. As she walked through the ship, she looked at everything with curious eyes. She did not flinch when warriors growled at her. She did not hurry when they stepped too close. She moved through the metal hallways like she belonged there, like she had always been there. The cubs noticed her on the 2nd day. Rekka was the eldest of Cry 4. She was 8 cycles old, which meant she was almost ready for her first real hunt. Her fur was golden brown with darker stripes on her arms and legs. She was faster than any other cub in her crochet, and her teeth were already sharp enough to bite through bone. She saw the human walking past the training area and stopped to watch. Vorn, a male cub with a torn ear from a training accident, stopped beside her. "What is that?" Vorn asked. "A human. I heard the officers talking about her. She looks weak. No claws, no fangs. Her skin is bare." Vorn made a sound of disgust. "How does her species survive?" "They build machines," Rekka said. "They make weapons that do the killing for them. Cowards." Rekka watched the human disappear around a corner. "Maybe, but she does not move like a coward." The other cubs gathered around them, all curious about the strange visitor. Tira was the youngest at only 6 cycles. She was small and thin, and the other cubs sometimes pushed her during training. But her eyes were sharp, and she noticed things that others missed. "I want to see her closer," Tira said. "Crochet Master Drull told us to stay away from her," Vorn reminded them. "She will make us soft." "Looking is not touching," Rekka said. "We can watch from far away. We are hunters." Hunters observe their prey. So they began to watch. For 3 days, the cubs followed Yuna through the ship. They hid behind cargo containers and peeked through doorways. They watched her eat strange foods in the meal hall. They watched her read from a small screen in her quarters. They watched her walk the corridors at night when most of the crew was sleeping. But the most interesting thing happened on the 4th morning. Rekka woke before the dawn cycle began. She could not sleep, so she decided to practice her stalking in the empty corridors. She moved silently through the ship, her bare feet making no sound on the metal floor. She was pretending to hunt an enemy when she heard something strange. It was breathing. Deep, slow breathing coming from the observation bay. Rekka crept toward the sound. The observation bay was a large room with a huge window that showed the stars outside. It was usually empty at this hour. But when Rekka looked inside, she saw the human. Yuna stood in the center of the room. Her eyes were closed. Her arms were raised above her head, palms pressed together. She breathed in through her nose, slow and deep, then breathed out through her mouth. Rekka had never seen anything like it. Then Yuna moved. She bent forward at the waist, folding her body in half until her palms touched the floor. She held this position for several breaths. Then she stepped one leg back and raised her arms to the sides, her body forming a shape like a weapon aimed at some invisible target. Her movements were smooth and controlled. There was no wasted energy. Every muscle worked together in perfect balance. Rekka forgot to hide. She stood in the doorway and stared, her mouth slightly open. The human was not weak. The human was doing something the cubs had never seen before, and Rekka wanted to know what it was called. She ran to find the others. Rekka gathered all 12 cubs from Cray 4 before the morning meal. They met in the storage area near the engine room, where the adults rarely came. The hum of the engines covered their voices. "I saw the human doing something," Rekka said. Her eyes were bright with excitement. She was moving her body in strange ways, bending and stretching and holding positions like statues. But it was not like our training. It was something else. "What do you mean?" asked Vorn. He crossed his arms over his chest. "Humans do not train. They are weak. I thought so too. But you should have seen her. She moved like water. Everything was smooth and controlled. She held one position for a long time without shaking. Her breathing was so slow and deep." Tira pushed forward through the group. "Can we see?" "She does it every morning before the dawn cycle. In the observation bay." The cubs looked at each other. This was against the rules. Crochet Master Drull had told them to stay away from the human. But they were young, and young hunters were always curious. "We will just watch," Rekka said, from the doorway. "She will not even know we are there." The next morning, all 12 cubs woke early. They moved through the ship in silence, using the stalking skills they had learned in training. When they reached the observation bay, they pressed themselves against the wall outside and peeked through the doorway. Yuna was there again. The stars glowed behind her through the big window. She stood on a thin mat with her feet together and her hands pressed against her heart. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing was slow. Then she began to move. She raised her arms above her head and stretched toward the ceiling. She bent backward slightly, then folded forward until her head nearly touched her knees. She placed her hands on the floor and stepped her legs back until her body formed a flat line. Then she lowered herself down and curved her spine upward like a snake rising from the grass. The cubs watched in silence. None of them had ever seen an adult move this way. Valari training was about speed and power and violence. This was different. This was about control and balance and breath. Yuna moved into a new position. She stood, on one leg with the other leg bent, foot pressed against her inner thigh. Her arms rose above her head, palms together. She looked like a tree reaching toward the stars. She held this pose without moving, without shaking, her balance perfect. Then she shifted her weight. One leg extended behind her while she leaned forward. Her arms stretched out to the sides. Her body formed a straight line from her fingers to her toes. She held this position, breathing slowly, her face calm and focused. Tira gasped. It was a small sound, but in the quiet of the observation bay, it was loud enough. Yuna opened her eyes. The cubs froze. Several of them prepared to run, but the human did not seem angry. She held her pose for 3 more breaths, then lowered herself gracefully and turned to face them. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was warm and gentle. "Would you like to come in?" Rekka stepped forward first. She was the eldest, so it was her duty to speak for the others. "We were not supposed to be here. We were told not to talk to you." "I know." Yuna sat down on her mat and crossed her legs. "But you are here anyway, so we might as well talk." The cubs entered the observation bay slowly. They spread out in a half circle around the human, keeping a safe distance. Up close, she looked even smaller and softer. Her skin had no fur. Her nails were flat and dull. Her teeth, when she smiled, were small and blunt. "What were you doing?" Vaughn demanded. "Those movements, what are they called?" "It is called yoga. It comes from my world. Humans have been doing it for thousands of years." "Yoga," Rekka repeated. The word felt strange in her mouth. "What is it for?" "Many things. It makes the body strong and flexible. It calms the mind. It teaches you to control your breathing and your movements." Yuna paused and looked at each cub in turn. "The pose I was doing when you gasped is called warrior." The cubs exchanged glances. Warrior was a word they understood. It was the most important word in the Valari language. "You are not a warrior," said Tira. Her voice was small but clear. "You carry no blade. You have no claws or fangs." Yuna leaned forward slightly. "There are many kinds of warriors. Some fight with blades and claws. Some fight with words and ideas. And some carry their strength deep inside their bodies, hidden, waiting for the moment when it is needed." "That does not make sense," Vorn said. "Strength is strength. You either have it or you do not. May I show you something?" Yuna stood up and walked to the center of the room. "Rekka, you are the biggest. Come and push me." Rekka hesitated. "Push you?" "Yes, as hard as you can. Try to knock me down." The other cubs watched as Rekka approached the human. Rekka was young, but she was already strong. Her muscles were built for hunting. Surely she could push over this small, soft creature. Rekka placed her hands on Yuna's shoulders and pushed. Yuna did not move. Rekka pushed harder. Yuna's feet stayed planted on the ground. Her body stayed upright. She breathed slowly and steadily, her center of balance perfect. "How are you doing that?" Rekka stepped back in surprise. "Yoga teaches you to find your center. When your body is balanced and your mind is calm, you become very hard to move." Yuna smiled at the cubs. "Would you like to learn?" The cubs looked at each other again. This was definitely against the rules. But they were hunters, and hunters learned every skill they could. "Yes," Rekka said. "Teach us." Yuna had them stand in the line facing the window. The stars spread out before them like scattered jewels. "First, you must learn to stand," Yuna said. "Place your feet together. Let your arms hang at your sides. Close your eyes. Breathe. The cubs tried to copy her. They shifted and fidgeted. Their tails twitched. The Lari cubs were not built for stillness. They were built for movement and action. Slower, Una said. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Breathe out for 4 counts. Feel your body. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel your weight settling down into the ground. Slowly, the cubs began to calm. Their breathing deepened. Their tails stopped twitching. Good. Now open your eyes. We will learn the first pose. It is called mountain. She taught them to stand tall with their shoulders back and their heads high. Then she taught them tree, where they balanced on one leg. Many of them fell. Tira fell 7 times. But each time she got back up and tried again. Finally, Una taught them warrior. Step your right foot back, bend your left knee. Raise your arms to the sides, palms down. Look forward. Breathe. 12. Young Velari stood in a line, their bodies forming the shape of warriors. They held the pose until their muscles burned. They held it until sweat dampened their fur. They held it until Una finally told them to rest. You did well, she said. Come back tomorrow morning and we will learn more. The cubs left the observation bay in silence. But as they walked toward the meal hall, Rekka noticed something strange. Her body felt different. Lighter somehow, but also stronger. Her mind felt clearer. The nervous energy that usually filled her before training was gone, replaced by a calm focus. She looked at the others and saw the same thing in their eyes. They would definitely come back tomorrow. Arena 3 was the largest combat simulation chamber on the ship. The walls could project any environment. The floor could shift and change to create hills, valleys, and obstacles. Today, it would become a jungle. Word had spread through the ship. Everyone knew about the challenge. Officers left their posts to watch. Warriors crowded around the viewing screens. Even Commander Grath himself came to see the humans' cubs fail. Crochet Master Vela stood with her cubs near the eastern entrance. She was tall and lean, with silver fur and pale eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light. Her cubs were the largest on the ship. They had trained together since birth. They had never lost a simulation match. Vela looked across the arena at Crochet 4 and smiled with all her teeth. This will be quick, she said to her cubs. The human has made them soft. Show no mercy. Her cubs growled in agreement. They were eager. They could smell victory. On the western side, Cray 4 waited in silence. The cubs stood in a loose formation, their breathing slow and controlled. Rekka was at the front. Behind her stood Vorn and the other stronger cubs. In the back, almost hidden, stood Tira. Una was not allowed in the arena. She stood in the viewing gallery above, her hands pressed against the glass. Crochet Master. Drell stood beside her, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Your cubs look calm, Drell said. It was not quite a compliment. They are ready. Crochet 7 has won 37 consecutive matches. Some of those matches ended with serious injuries. I know. If your cubs lose, I will not be gentle with them. Una turned to look at him. If my cubs lose, you may do what you wish, but they will not lose. The arena began to change. The flat metal floor twisted and rose, forming hills and valleys. Holographic trees appeared, tall and thick, with branches that blocked the light. Fog rolled across the ground. In moments, the arena looked like a jungle from some wild planet. 2 flags appeared on opposite sides. Crochet 7's flag was silver. Crochet 4's flag was gold. The rules were simple. Capture the enemy flag and bring it to your starting position. Defend your own flag. The first crochet to succeed would win. A horn sounded. The simulation began. Crochet 7 moved immediately. They spread out in an attack formation, 3 cubs running straight toward the enemy flag while the others provided cover. They were fast and aggressive, crashing through the jungle like a storm. Crochet 4 did not move. In the viewing gallery, officers laughed. "The human has frozen them with fear," one said. "They are too scared to fight." But Yuna was not worried. She watched as her cubs stood in a tight circle around their flag. They were not frozen with fear. They were breathing. They were waiting. Rekka had explained the plan to the others that morning. Crochet 7 attacks first. They always attack first. It is what they are trained to do. We will let them come to us. We will use their aggression against them. How? Vorn had asked. The jungle has many places to hide. When they attack, we scatter. We do not fight them directly. We move around them. We confuse them. And while they are chasing shadows, Tira goes for their flag. Tira had looked surprised. "Me? I am the smallest. That is why they will not expect you. You have learned to be still. You have learned to be patient. You can move through the jungle without being seen. While we distract them, you reach their flag." Now, in the arena, the plan began. Crochet 7's first wave crashed into Crochet 4's position. But instead of standing to fight, Rekka's cubs scattered like leaves in the wind. They disappeared into the jungle, moving silently, using the skills Yuna had taught them. The silver cubs were confused. They had expected a battle. Instead, they found empty ground and a single flag standing undefended. "Take the flag," shouted the largest cub, a male named Krath. He reached for the gold flag. Vorn dropped from a tree branch above him. His weight knocked Krath to the ground. Before Krath could recover, Vorn rolled away and vanished into the fog. "Find him!" Krath screamed. His claws raked the ground in frustration. "They are hiding like prey." The silver cubs spread out, hunting for their enemies. But every time they caught sight of a golden cub, that cub disappeared. Rekka led 2 of them on a chase through the densest part of the jungle. She moved between trees with perfect balance, never stumbling, never slowing. When her pursuers finally caught up to her, she was standing in a small clearing, breathing slowly. "2 against 1, sneered one of the silver cubs. "You cannot win." "I do not need to win," Rekka said. "I only need to keep you busy." They attacked. Rekka did not try to defeat them. She dodged and weaved, using movements she had learned in yoga. When one cub lunged at her, she pivoted on one foot, smooth as water, and let him crash past her. When the other tried to grab her, she bent backward, her spine flexible from countless cobra poses, and slipped free. The silver cubs grew frustrated. They swung wildly, wasting energy. Their breathing became heavy and ragged. Across the arena, similar scenes played out. Crochet 4's cubs did not try to win individual fights. They ran. They hid. They distracted. They led the silver cubs in circles. And while this happened, Tira crept through the jungle toward the enemy flag. She moved slowly. Each step was careful and silent. She controlled her breathing, keeping it slow and quiet. Her small size, which had always been a weakness, now became her greatest strength. She slipped through gaps in the undergrowth that larger cubs could not fit through. Crochet 7 had left 2 guards at their flag. They stood back to back, watching the jungle for threats. They expected an attack from the front. They expected noise and violence. Tira was neither noisy nor violent. She found a position behind a thick tree, close enough to see the guards clearly. She waited. She breathed. She remembered what Yuna had taught her about patience. The guards were nervous. They could hear the sounds of fighting from across the arena. They wanted to join the battle. They shifted their weight from foot to foot. Their attention wandered. One guard turned to speak to the other. For just a moment, both of them looked in the same direction. Tira moved. She sprinted from behind the tree, her small legs carrying her faster than she had ever run before. She grabbed the silver flag and kept running. By the time the guards realized what had happened, she was already disappearing into the fog. The flag one guard screamed. She took the flag. They chased her. They were bigger and faster. They should have caught her easily. But Tira knew this jungle now. She had memorized the paths during Rekka's planning session. She knew where to turn, where to duck, where to climb. She burst out of the jungle near Crochet 4's starting position. Rekka was there, bloody but still standing. Vorn was there, limping but alive. The other cubs were gathering, emerging from the trees. Behind Tira, the silver guards crashed through the undergrowth. They were almost on her. Tira dove forward and slammed the silver flag into the ground next to Crochet 4's gold flag. The horn sounded. The simulation ended. In the viewing gallery, there was silence. Officers stared at the screen in disbelief. Commander Grath's mouth hung open slightly. Crochet Master Vella's silver fur stood on end, her pale eyes wide with shock. Crochet Master Drell turned to Yuna. His expression was strange, something between anger and wonder. How? He asked. Yuna smiled. They learned to breathe. They learned to wait. They learned that strength is not just in the body. It is in the mind. It is in the moment you choose to act. Down in the arena, Cray 4 gathered around Tira, the smallest cub, the one who fell 7 times learning tree pose, had won them the match. Rekka put her hand on Tira's shoulder. You did it. Tira's legs were shaking. Her heart was pounding, but her face wore a smile that showed all her small, sharp teeth. I held my pose, she said. Just like Yuna taught us, I held my pose until the moment was right. Crochet 7 stood in defeated silence. Krath, there, largest cub, stared at the gold and silver flags standing side by side. He had never lost before. He did not know what to feel. The cubs of Crochet 4 walked out of the arena with their heads held high. They had fought like Valari, yes, but they had also fought like something new, something different, something that humans had known for thousands of years. 8 days passed. Every morning before the dawn cycle, 12 cubs crept through the ship to the observation bay. Every morning, Yuna was waiting for them with her thin mat and her calm smile. She taught them new poses. Downward dog, where they bent forward with their hands and feet on the ground and their hips raised high. Cobra, where they lay on their stomachs and curved their spines upward. Seated twist, where they sat with their legs crossed and turned their bodies to look behind them. The warrior remained their favorite. They held it longer each day. Their muscles stopped shaking. Their breathing stayed smooth and even. They began to feel something new inside themselves, something they did not have words for. The changes showed in their training. Crochet Master Drell noticed first. During combat practice, Rekka moved differently. She did not charge at her opponents like before. Instead, she waited. She watched. When the other cub attacked, she stepped aside at the perfect moment and struck from an angle he did not expect. Again, Drell growled. Rekka faced her opponent again. This time, he was ready for her tricks. He circled slowly, looking for an opening. Rekka did not move. She stood balanced and relaxed, her weight centered over her feet. Her breathing was slow and deep. The other cub lost patience. He lunged forward with his claws extended. Rekka pivoted on one foot, a movement she had practiced in tree pose 100 times, and let him fly past her. Before he could recover, she was on his back, her arm around his throat. Match, Drell announced. His eyes narrowed as he studied Rekka. Where did you learn that movement? I practiced it, Rekka said. This was not a lie. Vorn showed improvement too. His strikes were faster and more precise. He wasted no energy on wild swings. Each movement had a purpose. Tira, the smallest cub, discovered that her new balance made her almost impossible to grab. She slipped through the hands of larger opponents like water through fingers. Crochet 4 began winning more matches. The other crochets noticed. The instructors noticed. Whispers spread through the ship, but secrets on a warship never stay secret for long. On the 8th day, Crochet Master Drell followed his cubs. He woke in the darkness of the sleep cycle and waited in the corridor outside their quarters. When he saw them leave, one by one, he followed at a distance. Drell was a hunter who had killed 100 enemies. Moving silently was as natural to him as breathing. The cubs never knew he was there. He reached the observation bay and stood in the shadows near the entrance. He watched as his cubs arranged themselves in lines facing the window. He watched as the human female stood before them. He watched as she led them through strange movements and poses, their bodies bending in ways he had never seen. His fur rose along his spine. His claws extended without his permission. A growl built deep in his chest, low and dangerous. "What is this weakness?" he snarled, stepping into the room. The cubs froze. Their golden eyes went wide with fear. They knew that voice. They knew what it meant when Crowmaster Drell was angry. Una did not freeze. She was in warrior pose, balanced on one leg, arms extended. She held the position for 3 more breaths, then lowered herself slowly and turned to face the massive Valari. "Good morning, Crochet Master," she said. Her voice was calm and polite. "Would you like to join us?" Drell stalked forward. He was 3 times her size. His gray fur was marked with scars from battles older than these cubs. His teeth were long and yellow and sharp. When he growled, the sound filled the room like thunder. "You teach my cubs to be soft," he said. "You teach them to be prey. This ends now." The cubs pressed against the wall. Several of them shook with fear. But Rekka noticed something strange. The human's heartbeat had not changed. She stood before the most dangerous warrior on the ship, and her heart beat slow and steady. With respect, Una said, "I am teaching them to be better hunters. Hunters do not sit and breathe. Hunters do not twist their bodies into foolish shapes. Hunters fight. Hunters kill. These cubs have been winning more matches in training. Have you not noticed?" Drell paused. He had noticed. He had not understood why until now. "That proves nothing," he said. "Playing games with other cubs is not real hunting." Una nodded. "Then let us prove it another way. A real test. My cubs against cubs who have not learned yoga. If mine lose, I will stop teaching them. I will leave this ship on the next shuttle, and you may discipline them however you see fit." Vorn made a small sound of fear. Valari discipline was harsh. Cubs who failed were beaten. Cubs who showed weakness were marked with scars that told the whole ship of their shame. "And if your cubs win?" Drell asked. "Then you let me continue teaching them. And perhaps you will try yoga yourself." The cubs held their breath. No one spoke to Crochet Master Drell this way. No one challenged him. He had killed the last 2 warriors who challenged him, and he had displayed their skulls in his quarters. But Una stood before him without fear. Her eyes met his. Her body was relaxed, but ready. She looked like someone who had already won. Drell's growl faded. Something that might have been respect flickered in his blood-colored eyes. "Crochet 7, he said. "Tomorrow. The hunting simulation in Arena 3. Your cubs against theirs. First crochet to capture the enemy flag wins." Una nodded. "Agreed. Crochet 7 has never lost." Drell turned and walked toward the door. He paused and looked back at the cubs. "If you lose tomorrow, you will wish you had never been born." He left. The cubs stood in terrified silence. Tira was the first to speak. "We are going to die." "We are not going to die," Rekka said, but her voice was not steady. "Crochet 7 is the strongest. Their crochet master is Villa. She killed 3 challengers for her position. Her cubs are bigger than us, faster than us, meaner than us, maybe. Yuna knelt down so she was at Tira's eye level. But they do not know what you know. They have not trained the way you have trained. They fight with rage and aggression. You have learned something different. What have we learned? Vorn asked. His voice was bitter. How to stand on one leg. How to breathe slowly. That will not help us when they are tearing our throats out. Yuna stood up and walked to the window. The stars spread out before her, cold and eternal. There is an old story from my world, she said. Long ago, there was a young warrior who was small and weak. All the other warriors laughed at him. They said he would never win a battle. But this young warrior found a teacher who showed him how to use his enemy's strength against them. He learned to wait to watch, to find the perfect moment to strike. He became the greatest warrior his people had ever known. Is that true? Rek asked. Yuna smiled. Many stories are true in the ways that matter. Tomorrow, you will fight cubs who are bigger and stronger. But you have something they do not have. You have calm. You have focus. You have control. She turned to face them. Today, we train. Not yoga. Today, I teach you how to use what you have learned in a real fight. The cubs looked at each other. Fear was still in their eyes. But something else was growing there too. Hope. Determination. The fire of young hunters who refused to become prey. Teach us, Rekka said. Yuna nodded. First, we breathe. Then, we plan. Crochet 7 expects you to fight like Valari cubs. We are going to surprise them. She sat down on her mat and crossed her legs. The cubs sat before her, forming a half circle. Now, Yuna said, let me tell you about something humans call strategy. 3 days after the match, Yuna returned to the observation bay for her morning practice. She expected to find her 12 cubs waiting as usual. Instead, she found Crochet Master Drell. He stood alone in the center of the room, his massive body silhouetted against the stars. His gray fur was smooth, not raised in anger. His claws were retracted. He looked almost peaceful. Good morning, Yuna said. Drell did not turn around. I have led warriors for 20 cycles. I have trained hundreds of cubs. I thought I knew everything about making hunters. He paused. I was wrong. Yuna walked to stand beside him. Together, they looked out at the endless darkness between the stars. Your cubs did not just win, Drell continued. They won in a way I have never seen. They used patience as a weapon. They turned the enemy's strength into weakness. They did not fight like Valari. No, Yuna agreed. They fought like themselves. Drell was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer. Show me. So Yuna taught the Craymaster. She started with mountain pose. Drell's body was built for violence, all hard muscle and sharp edges. Standing still was difficult for him. His tail twitched. His ears turned toward every small sound. Breathe, Yuna said. Let your thoughts pass like clouds. Do not chase them. Just breathe. Slowly, minute by minute, Drell began to calm. His breathing deepened. His body relaxed. For the first time in his long life, the old warrior felt something other than the hunger for battle. He felt peace. When the cubs arrived, they found their Craymaster standing beside the human, both of them in warrior pose. Their mouths fell open in shock. Well? Drell growled, but there was no real anger in his voice. Are you going to stand there staring, or are you going to join us? The cubs scrambled to take their positions. And so began the first official yoga session of Cray 4. Word spread. At first, only a few curious warriors came to watch. They stood in the doorway and laughed at the sight of fierce Valari hunters standing on one leg with their arms raised. But then they noticed something. The cubs who practiced yoga were performing better in all their training. Their reflexes were sharper. Their endurance was greater. They healed faster from injuries because their bodies were more flexible and their stress was lower. One warrior, a female named Hessa, who had once killed an enemy general in single combat, asked to join the morning session. Then another warrior joined. Then another. By the end of the month, the observation bay was too small. Yuna had to move her sessions to the main training hall. 50 Valari gathered there each morning before the dawn cycle. Warriors and cubs stood side by side, breathing together, stretching together, holding warrior pose together. Commander Grath watched from the doorway one morning. He did not join, but he did not stop them either. When Yuna finished the session, he walked over to her. "My crew is changing," he said. "They are calmer, more focused. There have been fewer fights in the mess hall, fewer injuries in training. That is the power of yoga," Yuna said. "It teaches the body and the mind to work together." The High Council has heard reports of what is happening on this ship. They are interested. Grass blood-colored eyes studied her. They want to send yoga teachers to other ships, to colonies, to training academies. Yuna smiled. "I can help train teachers before I leave." "Good." Grath paused, then added something that clearly cost him effort. "You have done something unexpected, human. You have made my warriors better without ever lifting a weapon. I did not think this was possible. There are many kinds of strength, Commander. The Valari have always known one kind. Now they are learning another." Yuna stayed on the flagship for 3 more months. During that time, she trained 20 Valari to become yoga instructors. She developed a program that combined yoga with traditional Valari combat training. She wrote a guide that explained the poses in terms hunters could understand. Mountain became the hunter's stillness. Tree became the patient wait. Warrior became the moment before the strike. When it was time for Yuna to leave, the entire ship gathered in the docking bay. Cubs and warriors stood in perfect lines, their bodies straight, their breathing calm. Crochet 4 stood at the front, all 12 of them now nearly grown. Rekka stepped forward. In her hands she carried a blade in a decorated sheath. It was a Valari honor blade, the kind given only to the greatest warriors. "This belonged to my grandfather," Rekka said. "He killed 40 enemies with it before he fell in battle. It is the most precious thing I own." She held it out to Yuna. "I want you to have it." Yuna's eyes widened. "Rekka, I cannot take this. It is too valuable. You gave us something more valuable. You gave us knowledge. You gave us a new way to be strong." Rekka pressed the blade into Yuna's hands. "You taught us that a warrior is not just what they kill. The warrior is what they control, what they choose, what they become." Yuna accepted the blade with a deep bow. "I will treasure it always." Tira, no longer the smallest cub, but still the quietest, spoke up. "Will you come back?" "I do not know. But I know that what we started here will continue. Every morning, across this ship, and soon across many ships, Valari will gather. They will breathe. They will stretch. They will hold warrior pose until their muscles burn and their minds clear." Yuna smiled at them. "You do not need me for that. You have each other." The shuttle's engines hummed to life. Yuna walked up the boarding ramp. At the top, she turned one last time. "Remember," she called out. "Breathe. Be still. And when the moment comes, strike true." The ramp closed. The shuttle lifted off and flew through the force field into open space. The Valari watched until it was just a small light among the stars. That evening, a message went out from the High Council to every Valari ship in the fleet. A new training protocol was being implemented. All crews would begin their days with a practice called yoga. It would be mandatory. Some commanders grumbled. Some warriors complained. But when they tried the morning sessions, they understood. Their bodies felt stronger. Their minds felt clearer. The constant anger that had always burned inside them cooled to a steady flame they could control. 5 years later, the Valari were different. They still hunted. They still fought. They still conquered. But they did it with focus instead of fury. They made fewer mistakes. They took fewer unnecessary risks. Their empire grew stronger than ever before. And every morning, on every ship and every colony and every training academy, Valari of all ages gathered to begin their day. They stood with their feet apart, their arms extended, their eyes focused on the horizon. They breathed together. They held warrior pose together. Before they started, they spoke the same words. The words had become a sacred ritual, passed from teacher to student across the years. We stand as the human stood. We breathe as the human breathed. We find the stillness before the strike. We are the patient hunters. We are the calm warriors. We are Valari. Far away, on a small blue planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy, Yuna had returned to her normal life. She taught yoga at a studio in her hometown. Her students were human, ordinary people looking for peace and flexibility. But on the wall of her studio, she had hung the Valari honor blade. And sometimes, when the morning light came through the windows at just the right angle, she would look at it and smile. She had never killed anyone. She had never fired a weapon or commanded a ship or won a battle. But she had changed an entire civilization with nothing but breath and movement and patience. That, she thought, was its own kind of victory. And somewhere among the stars, 12 hunters who had once been cubs began their day as they always did now. Together, breathing, holding, warrior pose until the dawn cycle ended and the hunt began again. The human had come and gone, but what she taught them would last forever. This was her legacy. This was her gift. This was the morning ritual.